But, I had experimented with,
Rastafarianism.
Rastafarianism, exactly. Hey everybody, your buddy Basil here, and you are listening to the Joyspiracy Theory. That's right, welcome back everybody. We've got an interesting situation for you today. Many of you may remember Jen from back in episode 23 or 21. I don't know, it's still up in the air. I think it's 23. And she's also the moderator for the Canary Cry community. And she came to me with an idea, and she'll tell you this: I did not think it was gonna fly at first, but I was totally wrong. And what we got here is a TJT versus Basil, at least the first half of the conversation here. So get ready, buckle in, because Jen is taking the controls here and interviewing me, much like I would with many of you who are out there. But before we jump into this, we got a couple of Patreon supporters who got furry friends. They need a shout out. First of all, we got a dog named Mixer, who's a 13-year-old cockapoo. I have no idea what that is, but she's been through a lot, and she's still an excellent dog. But they don't call her dog to her face, because they don't want to discourage the fact that she thinks she's a human. So thank you, Michael, and thank you, Mixer. That's a pretty good name for a dog. I enjoy that. Also, we got another Patreon supporter, Amanda. Thank you so much. We're giving a shout out to Max, the most joy-filled German Shepherd not me. Okay. The most joy-filled German Shepherd Amanda has ever had. And Max also loves cats, so that's great. He fits right in. Hallelujah. Okay, guys, we're going to get ready to jump on into this. Now, as I mentioned, this is the first half of the conversation, and the second half will be over there on the Patreon. Partially as this whole thing was going to go over on the Patreon as a bonus episode, but it went so long and I think it went so good, we decided to release half of it here on the main stream, so we're going to do that. And if you want to catch the rest of the conversation, or if you want to shout out to your furry friend just like Amanda and Michael and Mixer and Max, you can head over to patreon.com/thejoyspiracy theory, and you can find all of that good stuff there. Thank you to everybody who supports the show. It's the only way we keep going, but that's enough about that. I say it's time we jump on into this. Here we go. This is going to be a merry mix-up. Hello.
Hello. Is this Basil?
This is me. Is this Jen?
It is.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here.
I know. It only took like 6 months to
Yeah,
schedule.
that's okay.
And you're only 11 minutes late, so...
Well, I'm
11 minutes late.
I'm getting mixed up now.
Okay. Oh, real quick before we get started, what are you grateful for right now?
Oh, I'm just so grateful for having the opportunity to come on the show. Also, I'm very grateful for my, it's great weather outside. I'm just looking around me here. Clock. I'm grateful for chair.
Loud noises.
I love lamp.
I love lamp.
No, I'm super, actually very grateful that we get to do this, that now you get to be the one in charge here, and I just get to go along for the ride. This is going to be fun.
That's terrifying to me.
It's all on you.
Oh, and there's a tornado watch, severe weather warning outside.
I saw you sent, is that over at you in Texas?
Yeah, North Texas.
That's fun.
It is. It's always fun.
Do you think it's because of the Gretchen episode? Oh, wait. Was that? Yeah, that was the one with the tornadoes. Yeah, okay.
Well, I think you've had 2 tornado episodes.
Well, that's what happens when you talk to so many people from the Midwest. There's a lot of conversations about tornadoes.
It's true. One, there was an actual like warning going off.
Yes. No, wasn't that the fella over on the East Coast during the Genesis bomb? That was a
No.
hurricane. We got hurricanes, tornadoes. I need to call somebody in Hawaii
Oh,
so I
for
can get
volcano.
the natural disaster trifecta. Is that insensitive?
No,
Okay.
I mean, so the New York Times came out with an article a few years ago, ranking the most dangerous cities for natural disasters in the
hmm
U.S., and Dallas is number one. We get a little bit of everything.
Whoa, I would not have expected that. Oh, and I will
Yeah.
say, probably by the time this gets posted, the episode with Carolina had come out, and she went through the Puerto Rico earthquake.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so this is like natural disasters make a weird recurring appearance on this show.
That's a new niche for TJT. And cats, juicing, and
Natural disasters. Oh no, I don't like this. This brand is getting out of control.
It is. Yeah, Dallas, we get hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, wildfires. Um, I think
That's too
that's,
many things. I don't know how you are still alive.
yeah,
So good job,
you know what?
Dallas people.
I wonder that myself sometimes, how I myself am still alive.
Yeah. No,
But
we've all wondered that. We've all
yeah,
heard your episode.
thanks.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
thanks, Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Okay, well, I guess let's get into it.
Okay, let's do it. By the way,
Okay.
I'm putting my full effort into not taking over and steamrolling this thing. So this is you. I'm holding my tongue.
Well, I give you permission
Okay.
that if it starts going off the rails, then you can take over.
Okay. All right.
If I start to do this,
Uh-huh.
then yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. We'll see,
I'm curious to see
It's
where it goes, but let's
me too.
okay.
Me too. Okay, so we got the grateful out of the way and the natural disaster and the pre-interview banter. So,
Do you have a bullet points in front of you? Because that's
I
way
have
more work than I put into it.
I do have a couple of notes, but it it's kind of like I don't know what you're going to answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of have to ask
Okay.
and then yeah.
Yeah.
Um and see where it goes. And I don't know if some of the questions might be too personal and you're just flat out going to be like, I refuse to answer that.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Which I do reserve the right to do.
100%.
Uh-huh.
Um, so we'll see. We'll
As
see
does,
where it
by the
goes.
way, as does everybody who comes on the show. So this is not special treatment that I'm giving myself.
No, I wanted to let you know that this is a very safe
Ah,
place
there you go. Very
that
good.
you can discuss anything you want, but if it's uncomfortable, if you don't want to talk about it, that's okay too.
Okay.
Am I sounding too patronizing?
Um,
A little?
See, I think maybe I might say that, but I don't know. No, you're doing great. You're doing a
No,
wonderful job.
you do say it. It was kind of
We got to
me.
be careful not to get too meta here. We can't give away all the secrets of the show.
That's true. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to use the word mocking, but
Yeah.
you
No,
you definitely
well,
said that.
this is a great first question because yes, that is this is the question 0.5, which is I do say that and I am completely serious when I do say that. But I think that there's an understanding. I think in me saying that to certain guests, they realize that, oh, I'm on the show for that specific reason, and I've never had a guest who like completely shut down on something. Oh, there's a cat who joined us.
Oh, yay.
Hey, kitty.
Um, No, and you never sound, mocking or patronizing, like, and it's always in conjunction with a very personal question. And so you're just reiterating that it's a safe place. I personally was mocking you. So,
Oh, well, thank you.
yeah, you're
I
welcome.
do try to make that a habit to just mock my guests within the first
I,
6 minutes.
maybe that's my brand,
Yeah.
just mocking
Okay,
people
I
left
see
and
what we're
right.
doing here. Okay, we'll see where this goes.
I
I
keyed.
don't know.
Um, I think it's fun. It's like I'm like a mirror for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
hmm Okay, so you feel like talking about your childhood-ish
Yeah,
to an extent?
sure. I'll give it a whirl.
Okay, so I've listened to some other of your interviews and podcasts, and I'm sure other listeners have too. But, you mentioned something pretty interesting on Natalina's Beyond Extraordinary, that you were raised by wolves. Do you care to comment on that? Or like,
Do I care to comment? Yes, I was raised by wolves, which is kind of a metaphorical, sort of a poetic way to say that I grew up in sort of a rural-ish, mountainous area. Um, I think the exact location is not too important for the purpose of this conversation, but it was a smaller mountain town, which was a unique experience, which I actually very much still am in love with and love small mountain towns. They're my favorite places to be. Um, it has its pluses and minuses. Looking back, I think after living in the place like Southern California or LA area, I would definitely prefer to raise children in a small mountain town. Although it does come with its I don't know, its downsides or certain traps that children can fall, literal traps like bear traps, snares of different sorts.
wolves?
Yes, specifically just a wolf lying in wait.
That's so biblical.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
Yes, it
Uh,
is.
so I know you've said that you were raised in the church. Am I
Uh-huh.
am I correct in this?
Yes, you are correct.
But then your parents kind of, I don't want to use the word backslid, but you ended up
Yeah.
having to be like almost the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual head.
Oh, I probably wouldn't put it that way. I can't remember exactly what I've said before, but no, backsliding is not a good way to
Okay,
describe
yeah,
what my parents did.
I'm sorry. I'm
So
sorry.
yeah, my parents were church leaders. Specifically, my father was a pastor and is a pastor now today. And but when I was younger, he was the pastor of a much larger church that sort of had a very set, the sort of corporate structure that churches have nowadays, part of a large denomination, a very popular denomination, especially at the time. And basically what happened was just the nastiness of the church. I mean,
Mm,
we're very familiar,
yeah.
all of my family, but as well as people listening, the nastiness that can happen within the church. And a lot of times it's interesting, and it's why I have such a soft spot in my heart for people who have experienced nastiness in the church, especially coming from the leadership, because even in leadership, you experience the same thing. And so, it breaks my heart even more when that gets passed down through the leadership to congregations or in counseling or in whatever it is. But long story short, with my parents, they experienced some nastiness from whatever, board of elders, or I don't even know what you would call it. Every kind of church does their own thing. But the elders and the board and everybody, basically they all turned their back on my father in one way or another, sort of out of the blue. And for, the way it's been described to me, for basically, not very good reasons. And so he left. He didn't give him a chance to act on that. In whether they were gonna kick him out or demote him or do whatever they were gonna do, he just left and said, "This is dumb. Why would I put up with this, especially in a church that I've chosen to be at and like have invested my life in helping and." Getting involved in people's lives and taking on the responsibility of, shepherding the congregation and things like that. And, he just left. And that's when the whole family packed up and moved to the mountains and stopped going to church. And it was never, even during the time, I mean, we were, quote, a Christian family. Like, they still taught me about God, more or less. But there was no going to church. There was no, looking for Christian influence or anything. And, maybe a little less upholding the sort of moral standards that you'd be held to in maybe a tight church body. But, nothing horrible. But yeah, that was basically it. And then as the story goes, we had a friend who was a Christian friend, or, our families were friends, and I hung out at their house all the time, and they went to Awanas. And so I participated weekly in Awanas. And,
I'm not entirely sure what Awanas is.
You don't know what Awanas is? What?
For the listeners, why don't you explain what Awanas is?
That was very good, but the listeners definitely know what Awanas is. No, so Awanas.
I don't for sure.
Okay, so Awanas is like a Christian scouts, not necessarily like a Boy Scouts, because I think Christians have like the Royal Rangers type thing. This was more of a scouts, but instead of nature, it's like either a school gym or like a church sanctuary on, I believe it was Tuesday nights. And you wore your little vest. Everybody had a uniform you would wear, and you earned little badges or jewels on your crown.
Was it co-ed?
Yep, it was co-ed.
Okay.
So that's what I mean. It wasn't necessarily like a Boy Scouts type thing. But it's a similar tone in programming. And so, you would memorize, and not programming like brainwashing by the media, programming like curriculum.
Thank you for
I know.
clarifying.
Our crowd, we have to make sure to stipulate those types of things. Can't just drop that kind of vocabulary. So we would memorize verses, and you would play games, and you would get a little teaching, and you would sing some songs and all that kind of stuff. And you would get the coveted Awana bucks for performing well in these different activities. And then you could take your Awana bucks to the Awana store. They weren't very creative with their naming things.
Clearly.
And you would, buy little junky prizes or candy or something with your Awana bucks. So it was a very fun program, and when you're a kid, they did there's a lot of reward. They really do a good job of activating that reward stimulus, and you get to participate in this Awana bucks economy. And I enjoyed it so much, and that family kind of reconnected me as a child to organized Christianity. And as the story goes, I don't necessarily remember this, but as the story goes, told by my mother, I was the one who insisted that my parents start going to church again. And so from there, they started going to church again. And shortly after, they became pastors of a very small church up in this mountain town. And so, yeah, I often think back to how different life would have been if, not just if I wouldn't have, like, insisted as a child that my parents go to church, but, like, if we hadn't met this family that took me to Awanas, and if I didn't enjoy Awanas as much as I did, and things like that. I mean, I very well may have grown up in a non-church going family, which would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Such is life.
I think it's interesting a lot of times when adults experience that type of spiritual abuse, they almost pass that bitterness and offense onto their children and try to shield them from anything like that as well, and that your parents didn't do that and allowed you to still continue in these types of activities.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So not that my parents' story is mine to tell, but neither of them grew up in church-going families. And both of them came to Jesus on their own, and not in traditional ways. They weren't converted or evangelized. They actually, both of them separately, had very extreme sort of mystical, sort of prophetic, open-eyed visions that pretty much converted both of them on the spot, or that's when they gave themselves to Jesus. And
did they know each other at the time, or they completely?
Oh man, my parents' story is a long, winding
okay.
story. I believe no. I would say it's not important. If they did know each other, it was so distantly that it wouldn't be important to the story.
Okay, so they weren't married. They
No.
didn't come to Jesus. Okay.
No.
Okay, that's what I was.
They may have met each other, but their story is like a 7-year-long story of
I can relate.
back and forth. Yeah. It's a very interesting story. Which
we'll have to get him on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I would be fine telling it, but I don't know. It's A, not my story to tell, and B, probably would be better if they told it.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah. So as far as the bitterness, your question. I think after they left the church, I think they were bitter towards the church, the organized Christian religion.
As an institution.
I remember always there being a, Jesus-loving, God-loving prayer element. Although, when I finally got them to go back to church, I was still very young. So if there was a period of time that they just totally turned their back on God, it was when I was very young, and I would remember none of it.
Okay.
I mean, in a totally turn away from God completely sort of way.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Which may have actually happened. I don't know. I'm not here to say it didn't happen. It could have happened. But yeah. Anyways.
Okay. That's an interesting story. It really is.
Yeah, it is. And it takes a little while to talk. Maybe someday I'll try to get more details. I only even really fully put the story together and asked for the remaining missing details in my 20s. This is pretty.
You're still in your 20s.
Oh, yeah, for now. But I mean, it took me that long to even really get the full story.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm still finding things out about my parents. My dad has passed, but, I'm almost 40 and I'm still finding out the quote unquote, real story.
Right. It's a lifelong journey learning the real story.
Right. And you have these ideas of what happened in your head, and then, they're like, no, not at all. That's not even close to how that happened. You're like, I've been living with this lie for years.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that too, where, I can see as a parent, you would kind of give just a benign explanation to something without thinking about it, just because you didn't want to explain some sort of, like, for instance, why my parents left the church. Like, like, you can't explain that to a 7-year-old necessarily, so you give some sort of benign explanation, and then they just believe that benign explanation until they're like 23 because they never questioned it.
Because, you don't think to question your parents. What they tell you is gospel.
Oh, and yeah, I mean, which is kind of funny because my dad is a little bit of he'll kind of yank your chain once in a while. And one of the big ones, and this is like a not very important story, but in my little mountain town we grew up in, there's a little airport just for like little things.
Sure.
And we would always have to go to the nearest big city to fly out. And one time I asked my dad, like, hey, why don't we just fly out of the airport in our town? Like, can't big planes come there? Why do I never see big planes? And he says, oh yeah, big planes come there all the time. There's Learjets landing. There's big old Boeing 747s all the time. We just like this other city better. And again, until I asked that question probably when I was around 7 or 8, and it was only till maybe 24 or 25 that I realized that dude was lying to me. There's no big planes here.
It took you that long to realize that you've never seen a big plane.
It took me forever, and I had like espoused that knowledge to people, like, oh yeah, Learjets can land there. Yeah, I never see them, but they can. For like 18 years or something. And obviously he didn't mean that in any sort of malicious way, but he just said it to a kid one day, and I believed it for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I've got stories. My dad was the same way, He would tell us that we couldn't sleep with socks on because our toes would fall off. And to this day, I can't sleep with socks on. I mean, I know,
wait.
Logically, my toes aren't going to fall off.
Wait, that's not true?
No, it's not.
I gotta go.
I
have some things I gotta work out.
I feel it, yeah. Oh, and the worst. He took us, I'm the youngest of 4. He took us to go see Star Trek Wrath of Khan in the theater.
Oh, nice.
So I'm like maybe 4 or 5 when that came out.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm really bad at math, so you figure it out.
Yeah.
But
no, I said there was 18 years between 7 years old and 25 years old, so
that's legit. That seems about right. But the scene with the earwig.
Yes, I do.
He told us that that's what would happen if we didn't clean our ears out.
Yeah, as a younger adult, like looking forward into the future, having kids, like you really gotta pay attention to that stuff because you can't mess with these kids.
He thought it was hilarious.
Oh, of course we do, but we don't realize that it actually sticks with you.
Lost my hearing due to cleaning out my ears so profusely with Q-tips that, I could have really damaged my hearing.
I know. I probably have. I have a small obsession with sticking things in my ears.
That's really weird.
Yeah, which is probably not the smartest thing for a audio professional to be doing.
And now one of my worst nightmares are things crawling in my ear. Mm-hmm. And just like 2 weeks ago, there was a story of this woman who had a roach stuck in her ear for 9 days.
Yeah, that's not cool.
9 days.
I don't like it.
Like, how? No.
Okay, can we change the subject? It's making me feel weird.
I apologize.
I don't like it. Quick, change the subject.
Okay.
There's something in my ear.
Okay, so you've also mentioned that you used to listen to Coast Art Bell when you were like 11.
Uh-huh.
So I really want to know, and I'm sure other people do too, how you got into conspiracies. You know,
Yeah.
you talked about how you and Gons met,
Hmm.
and the what was it? Oh, I can't remember the name
Occupy
of the
Wall
movie.
Street
Yes,
is,
thank
yeah.
you. Uh, but obviously you were already into conspiracies before that, right?
Well, that's an interesting story. That's a very interesting story, not because it's actually interesting, but because I think it's unexpected when I tell people. Um, so yeah, when I was younger, actually being in a mountain town, my dad would take me skiing, and we would, for some reason, this is very odd, but Art Bell and Coast to Coast and what was it? There was one more sort of secondary show like that was playing. They would play at like 6 in the morning where I lived, which is really weird because I know everywhere else they play whatever, like 11 to 3 or something crazy.
Yeah, midnight to 3 was in my
Yeah,
town. Yeah.
yeah. So it would play in the morning where I was, as well as like Rush Limbaugh and stuff like that. But it was that was less on topic. So yeah. Anyway, so I have very fond memories of like driving to go skiing, listening to these things. And who knows? Maybe it wasn't on the radio. Maybe he was like playing it on tapes or something. I don't know. And so it was very interesting. It was very engaging, especially since I've never been a morning person, even as a child. I know I have friends who have kids now, and they're like, yeah, my kid wakes up at 5 in the morning and just like goes on. I was never that way.
Yeah.
And so even as a kid, waking up at 6 was like
Brutal.
unthinkable. I still don't understand it. But I would listen to these types of programs driving to go skiing, and it was very engaging. It would, kind of wake me up. I wouldn't fall asleep on the way to skiing or something like that. And, it was all about aliens, which I found very, very fascinating. And they would have guys on who, had infiltrated Area 51, or, even back then they were talking about angels and aliens and demons all kind of being in the same realm. But and moving through life from about then until when I was 22 or 23, when I started with Guns, I was always very open, but I had avoided the obsession really well.
Hmm.
I was always very fascinated when I had heard something. But even that being said, I was kind of on board with the official story of 9/11 for a long time. Even halfway through college or so. I'm trying to think of other examples. I had avoided the obsession, but I was very open to those sorts of things. But I really never spent a whole lot of time thinking about it in a serious way. It truly was right around when I met Gons that I had sort of activated what I'm calling the obsession now, or just the wanting to look into it, or examining it, or fitting it in with a worldview as a whole, or looking at conspiracies in light of current geopolitics and questioning what I considered history and things like that. It really was in my early 20s. And it was the Occupy Wall Street movement. I'll just tell the story just in case there's anybody who hasn't heard it.
Sure.
Me and Gons and I were working at a mega church, and it was during the Occupy Wall Street movement. And I started paying attention to the Occupy Wall Street movement. Not that I was necessarily kind of on board with a lot of it, but that's kind of the age where you really start questioning the system. And so Occupy Wall Street had me questioning sort of the corporate system and the corporate government influences and money in politics and things like that. It really started with the foundational concept of our government is not what we think it is. But in between Art Bell and Occupy Wall Street, there was very little. I remember I had a friend, and this friend grew up in a Catholic family, so therefore, obviously, he was an atheist. And
obviously,
I'm just kidding, Catholics, but it is kind of a trope that Catholic kids tend to swerve atheist pretty early. And he was one of these atheist kids who is super deep in it, kind of identified with it specifically, and got into Zeitgeist. And that's when I first started hearing about the 9/11 thing. He kind of...
So, how old were you at this point?
I'd say 14 through 18.
Okay.
And he was very counterculture. He was very anti-religion, which we had many scholarly teenage conversations about. But I mean, and when I say friend, I mean like best friends. He was like my best friend for a long time, for years, 2, 3, 4 years. And it was very interesting because he was an atheist. I was a very good pastor's kid. Really, I mean, we all have our moments as teenagers. But as far as pastors' kids have the potential to swing, I was a golden boy still. But, I had experimented with, Rastafarianism, exactly. But see, that's the interesting thing.
Which we're going to have to get into, by the way.
Even when I was like experimenting with marijuana and things like that, it was in a context that was pointed towards God. Like,
and Jesus.
Like, I couldn't even do drugs without... Like,
you couldn't even rebel right.
I couldn't even rebel without it being like a Jesus-centered rebellion. And for those
That's amazing.
Yeah, and for those who aren't really familiar with Rastafarianism, I mean, the sort of popular idea of Rastafarianism is that you just smoke weed and grow dreadlocks and play reggae music. But it is very there. There are some good. I will say some good things about the Rastafarians, which is they are intensely Jesus focused, with some kind of theological twists that are too complicated to really get into.
Don't you have to be black to be Rastafarian?
Yeah, so the basic concept, and again, this is from a teenage white boy understanding, so if I get details wrong, all the Rastafarians who listen to this show, please forgive me. But the basic concept of Rastafarianism is it's still Yahweh. It's the Judeo-Christian God figure, and then there's Jesus. And I'm trying to remember. So basically, Jesus died and rose again, and then Jesus. Now I'm getting kind of confused. But there's this guy named Selassie, who is another messianic figure, either like another return of Jesus or was Jesus or something like that. And Selassie was going to come back and bring all of the African descendant people back to Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is heaven, or at least is, for the purposes of this conversation, Ethiopia is heaven, and Jesus is going to come back. And, Selassie was the king of Ethiopia. That's what it is. Yes.
And supposedly that's where the Ark is as well,
in
a tiny little chapel.
Well, there's a very strong connection with the Israelites. The idea that African Americans are direct descendants from Israelites and they're the real chosen people and stuff like that. One of the
lost tribes ended up in Ethiopia. Or was it because of Queen of Sheba?
Oh,
Is
something.
where
There's a
you
lot more
had
details. I could open up
yeah.
the Wikipedia and I could give a much better history lesson. But the fact of the matter is, even when I was rebelling and smoking weed, I was doing it in this context of like, in the Rastafarian context of like, oh, weed is a gift from God to help us pray and get close to God. And so I was doing that, and was even my rebellion was focused on relationship with God. Now, I have since discovered some theological issues with Rastafarianism, but it was very funny. It was just an interesting time of life. I forgot how we got to this part, but yeah.
Your atheist
Ah,
friend.
yes, my atheist
Yeah.
friend. So that was during that time. I had a very interesting teenage years. And so, yeah, my atheist friend, he was the one who was kind of waking me up to just, again, zeitgeist, the concept that things weren't what they seem. And I did a lot of pushback, and I would say for our age, we had some civil, intelligent conversations. At least we thought that we were. I'm sure looking back, the whole thing is just so embarrassing and like not intelligent at all. But it really got me critically thinking, is what it was. And to this day, I mean, he's a very good friend. I don't see him very often because he lives far away, but I still consider him a huge influence in my life in the very foundational, just questioning your reality, questioning what you're told, questioning what authority tells you, even questioning the church, and just power structures as a whole.
And that's actually biblical as well.
Oh
Paul
yeah,
says to
which now I
test
know.
every spirit. Yeah.
Right.
But sometimes we're taught, don't question authority within the church. You can't even, you don't question God. You don't question anything. You just take it as it is.
Right. Which, like, the Christ-like thing to do is to be constantly questioning your power structures, whether it's political or even the church. I mean, that's pretty much the basis of Jesus's ministry, was questioning the religious constructs at the time.
I mean, he pretty much only communicated in questions and parables.
Yeah, he was a soul rebel, man. So yeah, if I would have known then what I know now, I probably could have been better at debating my friend. But yeah, so that's what it was. I really wasn't. I think I did have sort of a hope in Bigfoot. I do remember really looking out for Bigfoot during my childhood too, which I've mentioned on a few episodes, as well as in person to people who ask. A lot of experience with sleep paralysis and entities and slight haunting at one point. And so I knew the supernatural was real. There was no question whatsoever. And so, yeah, I've often questioned if I had an experience with aliens at one point. But that's all kind of tied in with the sleep paralysis thing. I'll say, just to clear up the record, I don't think I've had a contact with aliens, but I've certainly experienced things. Actually, this is a funny point. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before. I may have. Later on, I mean, whenever I experienced these hauntings or entities or whatever as a kid, I told my parents, and I think that might have actually had something to do with my parents getting back into, or getting back into the church, or maybe keeping their faith active. Your kid coming in and telling you that there is a weird shadow or something. That'll activate your faith really quick. But later on, when we moved out of the house that I was growing up in, we still owned it for a while, and I went back to that house years, maybe 4 years after we had left it, and it had been vacant for the most part. And I went up there, and I was walking past my bedroom, and I noticed the way the light hit the door in a certain way. I saw the glint of a cross on the door that I'm assuming my mother had taken like oil and made a cross on my door in oil. That's
Anointed the door.
something like that. Yes, anointed my bedroom door because I was having these weird things. I mean, I had a TV in my room that would turn on at 3 o'clock in the morning, turn on to static, wouldn't turn on to a channel. You know, you turn on your TV now, it turns to a channel. This TV would turn on to pure static with the volume, the white noise static volume at full blast.
Oh,
And none of the buttons
yeah.
worked. The remote control didn't work. The only way I could get it to stop, because obviously it would wake me up and I'd be terrified, would be to unplug the electricity.
Right.
So this happened multiple times when I was a kid.
Always at 3 a.m.
Yeah, right around 3 a.m. It would come on full blast. I mean, loud. It's just so loud. And, waking you up out of a dead sleep, you're just like so disoriented and like terrified and strange. And none of the buttons worked. Nothing worked. I would have to go over behind the TV and unplug it before I could like go back to sleep. It was very strange. So yeah, anyways, long story short, I had weird things happening. So like I knew there was a supernatural, even though I wasn't like paying attention to the Illuminati or whatever, which my atheist friend was very adamant in convincing me about. I wasn't necessarily buying into the Illuminati or the Freemasons, maybe because I was so busy dealing with the crazy things happening in my room. One time I woke up in the middle of the night and it was as if like a spider's nest had hatched on my body. Yeah.
No.
Yes. And there was hundreds of spiders all over me. And I ran into my mother's room and I was like brushing spiders off, and I ran in my mother's room. I woke her up and I go, there's spiders all over me. There's spiders. And she's thinking that I'm crazy or had a bad dream. Like, just like, I mean, that's when you think of hauntings or scary things, you're like, oh yeah, you feel like there are spiders all over you. That's scary.
Sure.
But as she's saying this, she's like, oh, you just had a bad dream. Just this spider just went crawling right up the front of my shirt. She's like, oh my God. And she like hit me just to swipe the spider away. It like freaked her out. But that was really freaky. That was a freaky one. And then one other one, I don't know if I've ever shared this one, but I woke up in the middle of the night, September 10th, 2001.
Shut up.
Yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night, and my mother was kind of used to me coming in the middle of the night because I was having these issues. And I came into her room, and I'm just I could just imagine what she was thinking. Like, oh, is it the spiders again? Like, is it the bed shaking again? Is it something flying across the room again? And I go, I don't know. Mom, I just have a really, really bad feeling. I don't know what it is. I have a really bad feeling. And I slept with my mom and dad that night. And the next morning, they had a TV in their room. I woke up to footage of the towers. And I didn't have to go to school that day. So that was nice. So yeah, throughout my whole life, there's been these weird things going on, even though I wasn't like, doing a podcast on fringe Christian stuff. Never heard of the Nephilim until I met Gons, all that kind of stuff. It had just sort of been a constant reality, which I think is another reason why even in my pot smoking rebellion, I never, never like, was like, oh no, there's no God or whatever, is because I had experienced just these like unexplainable phenomena.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically describing my childhood as well,
Mm-hmm.
except for the fact that my dad, he believed in Jesus, but he was a very logical ex-cop, like,
Right.
didn't believe in the supernatural. And so I was always told, you were either dreaming or it's not real. And my mom would just tell me, oh, it's not real. You're just imagining things, which they think at the time is soothing or is the
Right.
best for the child. But, where yours may have reactivated your parents' faith, mine told me it wasn't real, even though I knew it was real, and there were no answers within the church at the time, which is what sent me off into the occult. So,
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just I have to give a shout out to Dr. Heiser, why I think his work is so important to finally have answers to the supernatural within the church. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think I think it's an interesting thing to keep in mind for parents,
Absolutely.
is we may think trying to convince the child that it's all in their head is a de-escalation, but that's not necessarily, I mean, at least if we're trying to raise our child with a supernatural worldview, or trying to create some sort of cohesion between our beliefs and our reality. It's hard to try to raise a Christian child and then tell them that everything they think is supernatural is all in their head.
Yeah, because there's one of two results. Either you're insane or your parents are lying to you. So neither of those are good options. And so, what do you do as a kid? Because it's real.
Right.
You absolutely know 100% it's real.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So there you go. I haven't always been the Nephilim expert that I am now.
Oh, except aren't you descendant of Nephilim?
Am I?
Isn't that one of the things that you are?
What? Is that something I've said?
No, in the videos, the debunk Basil videos.
Oh, yeah. Remember, we're talking to an audience here that hasn't seen all the Basil exposed videos. Yeah.
This part.
No, I'm not cutting anything out. There's if you haven't found it, there's a very funny. I don't even know if I want to lead people there for the views, but it is a 2-hour video of me exposed or something, and it's not very good. I mean, I've seen a lot of exposed videos. This guy could have put more work into it. He also threatened. Crazy. Yeah, I mean, he also made. Was
it the British dude?
I don't think so. I don't remember if he had a British accent or not. But he did claim that he was going to track me down and reveal my secrets, and I've yet to see that anywhere. But we'll see. Who knows?
Yeah. Maybe he's listening. Hi.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'd be fine if he did, really. I mean, my secrets are a lot less exciting than than what people think they are, I think. I was actually very flattered by his sort of breakdown of who I might be. It made my life sound much more exciting.
You're like, wow, I wish I was that guy.
I'm like, if only, buddy. If only.
If only. Right. Which is actually a pretty good segue into one of my next questions. What was the thought process, and was there a thought process, extensive and or otherwise, into creating an online persona?
Ooh, what a cliffhanger. What a cliffhanger, folks. Well, I hope you enjoyed this experience. I know I sure did. It really was an experience. And actually, we talked for over an hour after this. And so if you want to hear that, you want to hear the answer to this question and a bunch more questions, we really get into it over at the Patreon, patreon.com/thejoyspiracy theory, patreon.com/thejoyspiracy theory. You can get this second half of this conversation as well as a bunch more bonus material. You got Ask Baz going on over there, and another one about to drop soon. So if you want to get involved with that, you can head over to patreon.com/thejoyspiracy-theory. Well, hey, here's the thing, everybody. I just want to let you all know that I have just had such a great time doing this podcast as a whole, and I get emails from so many of you about how much you've been blessed and how hearing other people's stories has been so impactful. And I just want to let you know I agree. It's been really one of the most amazing experiences I've had, podcasting and otherwise, getting to talk with you guys. So I thought it was fun to just flip the script a little bit there. Hey, keep an eye out on the Facebook. Head over to facebook.com, search out the Joyspiracy Theory, like the page there. We're getting rolling on that, baby. We got a lot more memes, a lot more good, funny stuff to put a little happiness in your day. Plus, you can get the updates when all the new fun Joyspiracy Theory products hit the airwaves. Go ahead and do that. And please, if you could, head over to iTunes or whatever podcast player you're using and leave a rating and a review. A rating is stars, 1 to 5 stars. A 1 star is like you were listening to the Joyspiracy Theory and then all your hair fell out. 5 stars like you were listening to the Joyspiracy and a long, luscious mane grew out of your face and neck. Wait, I don't know why that's good, but apparently you like that. And a review is just saying all that in words and letting people know why you love the Joyspiracy Theory. It really helps spread the show around, and I very much appreciate it. Go and be good, everybody. Bye-bye.